and welcome to episode 2 of the Obsessive Viewer podcast. My name is Matt Hurt. I'm at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter, and joining me today is Anthony Ramian, who I call Tiny, or at Obsessive Tiny on Twitter. Today we're going to put on our contrarian hats and discuss some of our movie and TV opinions that go against the grain of the general public. But first, Tiny, what have you been watching?
As far as television goes, I've been watching HBO's flagship series, Oz, so far. It's been really interesting, just to kind of see how the cable, they went about finding their format, because they only have eight episode seasons,
right?
Which is kind of different than the format I'm used to now, anyways.
Yeah, and that was the first HBO series, or first?
I think it was one of the first, if not the first. And it sounds weird to say it, but it kind of established them as a really graphic, and hardcore provider, content provider, because it's a pretty rough subject. The show takes place at a state penitentiary called Oswald State Penitentiary, which they call Oz for short.
Right.
And it's kind of about a specific block of the prison that they called Emerald City, and it's sort of an experimental place where they have a different way of jailing the prisoners. It's just really interesting to watch them all interact with one another. It's got a great cast. The acting is good. Writing is top notch. It's a really good show. I'm liking it a lot so far.
Nice. J.K. Simmons and Harold Perrineau are both in that. Harold Perrineau being Michael from Lost.
Yes, the guy who yelled Walt for 5 seasons.
Yes.
Yep. Wow. And speaking of J.K. Simmons, it's kind of the role that put him on the map, really.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was in his 40s or something when he finally that was kind of his big break. And it's kind of strange seeing him in it, because he's a real hardcore white supremacist.
That's right. I remember hearing about that, and I kind of want to see it, because I'm only used to him from pretty much the most recent stuff he's done, and
comedies and stuff. Really,
yeah. He's a very comedic actor. The Farmers Insurance commercials and stuff.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's a really good show. I highly recommend it. It kind of speaks to me because I'm a criminal justice student.
I'm so glad you continued after saying criminal.
Nice. Yeah. So what have you been watching lately, Matt?
Well, I think you know what we're going to talk about now.
Yes, I do.
We both watched Under the Dome, the series premiere, last night. And I for one, I loved it. I liked it a lot. I think it showed a lot of promise. And the one thing that struck me about it was, I've been saying for the past however long that it could potentially be the next Lost.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Bold statement.
Yeah, very bold statement.
Losing listeners by the second.
Exactly. But what struck me about it was that the opening scene had Barbie, the main character, the protagonist of the show, burying a dead body. And I thought it was interesting because in I can't remember, Blake Snyder, I think is his name. He penned this, he coined this screenwriting rule that's called Save the Cat, which is basically when you're writing a screenplay and you're introducing your hero, you have to have him do something heroic at the start, like saving a cat, so that the audience has somebody to root for, something to root for to get behind him. And I can tell, gradually, when we're getting into the more popular anti-hero shows with The Shield and Sopranos, Breaking Bad, and House of Cards now, that we're seeing a shift in, we're not saving that many cats. And granted, Barbie does go on to save a kid from a falling piece of debris, but I just thought it was interesting that, and this is going to sound hokey and corny, but I thought it was interesting that he basically buried the dog before he saved the cat.
Huh.
And it was just in comparing that to Lost, because I've been making comparisons to Lost and Under the Dome.
We all have.
Is that, of course, yeah. There, at the beginning of Lost, we just have Jack running through the jungle and saving people from the wreckage. So it's an interesting dynamic shift from 2004 with Lost and 2013 with Under the Dome, and you can kind of tell how audiences are more forgiving and such. And then there was some other good stuff. I really like Dean Norris.
Oh, he's great casting for that role.
He's perfect casting, and there was a scene with him and Jeff Fahey, who played Lapidus on Lost. Again, another Lost reference. I'm sorry. Dean Norris, he plays Big Jim Rennie. He's basically, in the book, he's a power-hungry dictator, tyrant kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And then I'm hoping that they stick to that, at least gradually throughout the series. But there's a scene involving him and Jeff Fahey where they're basically talking about they're both in on some secret thing that's a big mystery now, involving stockpiling propane. And Dean Norris plays it in such an interesting way because in the book, Big Jim Rennie was more aggressive, and he plays it more like a politician in that. Like there was a scene where he was talking to the sheriff, and he said he was telling him to settle down, and because you don't want to mess up your heart or your bum ticker is what he called it. And he says it was such a fake, genuine concern, but you can tell that it's a threat. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing that character play out.
I think that was my favorite scene from the premiere too. Was the discussion that those two had. It was pretty powerful. You know, it's just two guys standing in the hallway talking, but there's a lot of power behind it when you got really good actors like that.
Oh yeah, and shrouded in mystery, which I like. One of the things I loved about Lost is that it just had this mysterious element to it. And I think Under the Dome could go that way.
Yeah, but again, we're comparing it to Lost. I think you made the point that the mystery is pretty strong, kind of like Lost, but the characters, like it was kind of like you said, Jack, he was an established role. You knew exactly what you were getting, and you kind of invested in them from the get go. But these characters, I think they might take a little longer to build. I think
so too, and I think one of the things that Lost had going for it was that the production value on the pilot episode was just so massive, and they had a 2-part pilot episode that was essentially worked as a great big, well-produced TV movie, and they had that to kind of go off of. And Under the Dome's only had a 42-minute episode so far, but I have high hopes. I have high hopes. And just shameless plug, I'm planning on reviewing all of the episodes this season on the blog at obsessiveviewer.com. So be sure to check that out if you're interested.
Awesome.
Tiny, what kind of movies have you been watching?
I've watched a couple movies lately, but one that I wanted to talk about was This Is 40 by Judd Apatow. It took me a while to watch it, finally.
Yeah, it did. Again, Lost.
That's true. I didn't even think of that. Jeez.
Wow.
People are going to be sick of it.
Oh, yes.
But the reason I think it took me forever to finally watch it is because you kind of, Judd Apatow's a comedy. He's comedy based, but he's very specific. You got to be in the right mood to watch an Apatow comedy. It's
absolutely
like for some reason he's gotten the habit of basically just making these 2 to 2.5 hour long comedies, which is pretty much unprecedented when it comes to comedies.
It is, especially like maybe it's more likely in an R-rated comedy like the stuff he specializes in. But it's also what struck me about it, and also Funny People and some of his other ones, is that they take a serious situation and he basically injects comedy into it. So This Is 40 is a marriage just kind of staling out basically, and that's when he puts the humor in it. And that's, I don't know, maybe I wasn't that huge of a fan of This Is 40. I liked it more the second time around, but I just think that I'm not 40 and I don't have kids, so maybe I just couldn't relate to it. But
yeah, I kind of, being in my mid-20s, I kind of viewed it as almost a warning, because it kind of solidified some of my opinions that, I don't know if I want to have kids, and you really want to get into all of that. But at the end of the day, I think they're actually a pretty charming family.
They really are
depicted in the movie. Every family has their problems.
Yeah,
every marriage has its problems. Plus, those are some pretty bratty. Well, at least the older one was pretty bratty.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a typical 13-year-old girl or not. But
yeah. Well, any 13-year-old girl that's that big a fan of Lost is just unprecedented. But
exactly.
I do think, speaking of her, that Maud Apatow, I really think, judging from her performance in both of the Apatow movies she was in, that I think she could. I think that if she chooses to, when she grows up, she could be a pretty dominant force in the comedy world.
Yeah, I think so too. Another Kristen Wiig or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Oh yeah.
And she's maybe even dramatic too, because when she was, it was one of my favorite scenes of the movie where the family's supposed to have a big party, and she decides to watch the finale of Lost.
Yes.
That day, which is a super emotional finale.
Right.
And she's just cowering in a corner with her iPad, watching the finale and just bawling her eyes out. And it's a really funny scene, but she played it as just perfectly straight, dramatic.
She really
did. Just really reacted that way, and I was impressed. There's not a lot of teenagers who can act that well.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree.
I enjoyed the movie. It had its flaws, and you got to be in the right mood for Apatow. But it was a good movie. So yeah. Nice. But what kind of movies have you been watching lately?
Well, I watched this movie on Netflix last night called "And Now a Word from Our Sponsor." And I purposely kept Tiny in the dark about this so that we can talk about it here on the podcast.
I'm curious.
It stars Bruce Greenwood, which was one of the main reasons why I watched it. It's kind of a drama comedy where he plays this brilliant ad exec who suddenly wakes up in a hospital and can only speak in ad slogans. So the premise sounds pretty funny.
Pretty unique.
Yeah, and it just didn't deliver for me. Bruce Greenwood is amazing. There's a scene where he's at a car dealership and he gets into like a Camaro or something and he just spouts off the entire ad. And it's Bruce Greenwood. He's amazing. He was in the Star Trek movies, and he was the president in National Treasure, Book of Secrets.
He's a really underrated actor.
He really is. And he has a very, very distinctive voice. Mm-hmm. And just seeing him spout off ad slogans is really, really funny. But the movie, it just didn't work.
So was the movie actually a comedy?
It was, but it was presented more like a drama than anything. There was a plot line involving this British guy who I actually tweeted it. He looked like a British Chris Hardwick, but nice. He played by Calum Blue, I think is his name, and he plays the head of the ad agency who is trying to steal Bruce Greenwood's job on the grounds that he's not mentally fit to run it or whatever. It's just kind of weird because he's not mentally fit to run it, clearly, and it's kind of, it's like, okay, are we supposed to root against this guy or what? But it was just kind of bland.
Sounds like it needed some script work, maybe.
It really did, and honestly, it really would have worked better as like an SNL sketch, rather than a movie. And the ending was just okay. For our listeners, if you guys have watched Arrested Development, season 3. The Rita storyline with Charlize Theron, there's an episode called The Ocean Walker where she pitches to where maybe is an ad exec, or not an ad exec, but a movie executive, and she is talking about her script problems with Rita, who is a mentally challenged woman, and she pitches to maybe that the movie should end with them walking across the water. And maybe it's like, yeah, that's brilliant because people are going to be like, what the hell did I just watch? I'm just gonna say that I liked it so that I don't look like an idiot. And that's like, it's literally how the movie ends. Not with walking over water, but it's that kind of thing that is just out of nowhere. Like, what did I just watch?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's strange.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I don't fully recommend it or anything like that.
I remember a couple of years ago, Bruce Greenwood was in a really, really great movie that was kind of an indie flick. Not enough people saw it, but it's called Mao's Last Dancer.
Huh.
It takes place in it takes place in like the 70s, and I think it's an actual true story about a Chinese dancer. And this was back when, China's still a communist country, but they were much more restrictive about letting their citizens leave the country.
Okay.
And so he goes to study abroad. He's a dancer, like a top of the line, like Olympic level dancer.
Wow.
And so this Chinese guy befriends Bruce Greenwood, who's a teacher, like a professor at like it's kind of like the Juilliard of dancing or something like that. I'm not sure. I don't really remember exactly, but Bruce Greenwood was, in my opinion, he was like Oscar level good in that movie. Like he just blew me. Like you could barely, like you mentioned, he has a very distinct voice. You couldn't recognize his voice because his character was a gay man, and he had a very high pitched voice. Okay, and seriously, you could barely recognize him from when he played JFK in 13 Days, or when he played the president again, and in the National Treasure movies. So, but yeah, if you ever find that movie, check it out. He's really good in it. It's a good movie too. It's fun to watch.
And it's called Mao's Last Dance.
Mao's Last Dancer. Yeah.
Okay,
cool
awesome
movie.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to our main topic?
I believe we shall.
I'm excited about today's topic, honestly. For me personally, I'm just not the kind of person that can do a top 10 list of favorite movies or favorite TV shows.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we just watch way too much stuff, and it's always changing. So, and I wanted our second podcast to be a good introduction to our tastes and stuff, and how we feel about certain things. So I thought it would be kind of fun to make everyone hate us as much as possible. Before that, basically movies that we love that everyone hates, TV shows that we hate that everyone loves, and vice versa across the board. Kind of just want to go through how we buck the trends of common opinion.
Okay. So, how our opinions differ and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds like fun.
So shall I start?
Please.
All right. Well, this is going to be a big one that I should preface it by saying that it's not quite that I don't like these movies. It's just I don't get the massive fandom, and I should, because it is the Star Wars movies.
Ooh, Star Wars.
Yes, I'm just not that into them.
Opening a whole can of worms.
Yes, I think that the problem was I was just too old to really appreciate the kind of the more child-based things.
Right, yeah. Lucas always said that he was geared it towards family.
The more movies. I think I watched it when I was a teenager, and just the magic of seeing it as a kid was just lost on me, and I was too old to really live vicariously through that magic.
Okay.
I can see that. Yeah, and I just remember.
I mean, you're wrong, but yeah, I get it.
Of course, or maybe not, but I just remember staying home from school with like VHS copies that I got from the library.
Right.
And I was just bored out of my mind. And it was, I don't know. And I've tried to watch it again, and I'm going to try to watch it again. But, I mean, honestly, since then and now, Lucas has murdered any chance of me liking it when he made the prequels.
Yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone on that.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I love seeing discussions of future or long ago, interplanetary politics and peace treaties and taxes and all that. I mean, you can only take so much of that enthusiastic action.
Yeah, don't forget that it was all, spoken by the most monotone voice coming out of Natalie Portman that you could possibly imagine.
Yes.
Oh, Senator Palpatine. Jeez, speak up, woman.
I know, right? But I will say that I'm very eager to see what J.J. Abrams does with Episode 7.
Nice, yeah.
Because, I mean, I wasn't a big fan. I had no affiliation with Star Trek or any kind of feelings about it, and he just made me love his movies, Star Trek, the lens flare movies. But I will say that it will take a lot to make me forget that Hayden Christensen is in my Return of the Jedi DVD, which I do own the DVDs because I've wanted to like them, but I just don't.
Such a travesty.
It really is, and I'll keep you guys posted if you're still listening when I rewatch it. So.
I get what you're saying about kind of getting hooked on it when you're a kid, because I remember getting hooked on it when I was a kid. I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I was in a toy store with my parents, and I saw an action figure of Jabba the Hutt, and I was like, what the hell is that? And, my dad was like, oh, it's from a movie. And I was like, I need to see that movie right now.
Wow.
And I think I watched it, maybe I was a little young then for it. I think if you're 7, 8, you might be a tad young.
Yeah.
Just to get all the themes and everything. So I think I first watched it when I was probably like 9 or 10, and I was just hooked automatically. And Yeah, and I'm with you on the remastered ones. I've never seen them because I refuse to watch them.
Right, I remember you mentioning that, and that's. I mean, I don't think you're missing much, but then again, I'm not a big Star Wars fan.
Right.
But I will say that, and this is going to just anger a lot of people or upset them. And if you guys have any feelings on this, feel free to comment on the blog.
Yeah.
But I prefer A New Hope over Empire Strikes Back.
Wow.
Yeah, I just think that thematically it's a better movie.
Huh.
It's not. I don't know. I just like it more. The whole being on the Death Star and being all secretive. I don't know. This is pending a rewatch of it, so
it's a little simpler too.
It is simpler, and it's. I mean, people say that Empire Strikes Back is darker, but and it is darker, but I don't know. It's going to sound weird, but it's not dark enough for me. I keep hearing oh, it's a dark movie, but in junior high, I was rewatching Saving Private Ryan over and over again, so my definition of a dark movie is a little different.
True,
but.
Wow.
I don't know.
I think with Empire, people just focus on the reveal.
Yes.
That spoiler alert: Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's dad.
Yeah.
And it's the greatest reveal in cinematic history. I mean, there's nothing that really compares to it, and it's such a huge moment in the whole pantheon of Star Wars that people focus on that, and that's why they love that movie so much. But I think if you kind of separate it from that, I think they're pretty. A New Hope and Empire are pretty similar movies, really.
Yeah.
They're about the same.
I'll agree.
I don't think it's so much better than the other ones, but
right.
It is my favorite. I can't lie.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, what's your first movie on the list?
The first one on my list is kind of weird. You might not be expecting it, but it's actually the Riddick series. Yeah, the Chronicles of Riddick series. And I know calling it a series is kind of bold because there's only 2 movies.
Right.
And technically the first one, Pitch Black, is
and you're saying you're a fan of them.
Prequel. I'm a big fan of them. Okay. Actually, the whole series. It's mostly the character more than anything. Richard Riddick is... I think he's... Part of what I love about it is that he's a textbook example of an anti-hero. In my opinion.
That's true, yeah.
He doesn't even like people at all, let alone just being a bad guy or whatever. That's what I like about him. And I don't think anybody would disagree with me on this, but Pitch Black is the better of the 2 movies that have come out so far. It's pretty underrated in my opinion. I don't think it's held high enough in the whole sci-fi community. I think it's a really good movie.
I think it has a dedicated fan base. It's a cult following of it, but I mean, I'm a fan of Cole Hauser, and he's in it, right?
Yeah, he plays the antagonist, sort of.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm trying to get past the fact that the guy's name's Dick Riddick, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a flaw. I can see that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's just kind of funny, but
yeah. And also, it's been said by Vin Diesel and David Twohy, who those 2 actually own the rights to the whole story.
Right.
They've actually said that they always viewed Pitch Black as like a prequel to the actual trilogy.
Okay.
And so the Chronicles of Riddick film, the second one, is actually supposed to be the first installation of a trilogy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought that Pitch Black and Chronicles of Riddick and Riddick were supposed to be.
That's what I thought too initially, but that's actually their plan. And apparently they actually have the scripts written, or they have like outlines written. I've heard Vin Diesel in interviews where he's like, "Yeah, we have the scripts locked up in a safe in David Twohy's office, and that's where they keep them." And it's always been they're just constantly trying to get funding for the 2 movies. But unfortunately, the Chronicles of Riddick movie wasn't as great, didn't do as well. So.
Yeah,
I'd still like to get them made.
Okay.
See them get made.
Have you seen the trailer for the 3rd one?
I have.
It's coming out. What do you think of it?
I'm kind of excited for it just because it's coming out finally. But honestly, I haven't even read the description for the plot, but it looks like it's basically just a rehash of the opening scene for Chronicles of Riddick. Okay. Where Riddick's just on some distant planet and some mercenaries are trying to hunt him down. It looks like the whole movie.
That sounds like a compelling...
It does sound good. I'm not saying it doesn't sound good. It's just that's exactly what happened in the opening scene of Chronicles of Riddick. So, and that was a cool part of that movie, but I don't know. It seems like they're kind of tripping over themselves a little bit. So, yeah, I like the series. It's not... I don't think it's amazing. It's no Star Wars. but it's really... I really connected with the character. So that's what I like about it.
That's cool.
Yep.
All right. Next on my list is a movie that you and I both love, and we're both fanboys for this director, Sunshine.
Nice.
by Danny Boyle, starring Cillian Murphy.
Such a great movie.
It's amazing. And
again, another underrated sci-fi film.
Absolutely, it's really underrated, and I can understand some of the complaints that people have of it. It's kind of borrows a lot from other sci-fi movies, particularly Alien. And the third act kind of gets into kind of a slasher movie kind of thing that kind of can be off-putting, but I think that overall, I think it's a really great, well done movie, and it's a very interesting plot about 7 astronauts on a ship headed toward the sun. They have like a big atomic bomb strapped to the front of it that they're basically flying it into the sun because the sun is dying. And so they're basically rebooting the sun, and it's set 7 years after a previous outing where the crew just disappeared, like no one heard from them. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of this mysterious kind of sci-fi horror element to it that's really interesting. And there's also this underlying theme throughout it that it's like two of the characters, Kaneda, the captain, and Searle, the psych officer on the ship. They have this unhealthy obsession with just staying in the observation deck of the ship, the aptly named Icarus, Icarus 2, actually.
Right.
They're just on the observation deck, just looking at the sun through a filter. And the closer they get, they have to adjust the filter to not, burn themselves alive. But they just have this fascination with it. And I think that's a great way for the movie to illustrate the central theme of science versus faith. And how, because that's what the whole movie is basically about.
Right.
And it's just a really well put together thing. It was a collaboration between Danny Boyle and Alex Garland.
That sounds right. Yeah.
The pair teamed up for 28 Days Later, which was one of my favorite movies of his and of the zombie genre. Yes, I'm calling it a zombie movie. It is a zombie movie. We'll get to that.
Let's not get into it.
We'll get into that at a later date. Yeah, so I just really liked it. It was great. I've watched it probably more times in the past 4 years than anyone else has, except for Tiny.
Yeah. And I think that's another movie of another case of just a really well-rounded movie because it's got every element that you want for a sci-fi flick. It's got
absolutely
great cast. Everybody's just beyond stellar in it, and Danny Boyle can do anything literally. He's the Swiss Army knife of directors.
He really is.
And Alex Garland has a way with structure, with plot, with dialogue, everything. They're just the top of their field, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And what I love about Alex Garland's writing is that he splits it up so evenly between acts. Like both Sunshine and 28 Days Later, there's very clear act breaks, and it's each act kind of has its own separate tone. Mm-hmm. And
it's not an easy thing to do, really.
It really isn't, and it can easily come across as hokey or amateur, but it's really a good when it's done by him. Cool. So yeah, I just really love that movie.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I agree.
What's next on your list?
Next on my list, this one's a little bit different. What I'm going for here is, let me just ask Matt, when you think of James Cameron, what movies do you think of?
What movies do I think of?
What like his flagship movies?
Okay.
If you will.
Well, let's see, Titanic and Avatar, Terminator,
Aliens.
yes, Aliens, yes.
And I think 90% of people who actually know who James Cameron is, which is probably 90% of the planet,
right?
They would go with those movies as well. But I feel like I'm on the outside here. My favorite movie of his is actually The Abyss.
The Abyss, yes.
The Abyss, and I think I love that movie because I think it's James Cameron's best, literally.
I will agree with you on that, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm not a James Cameron fan.
Right, I know. And I take a lot of issues with the guy as well, but I still think he's really visionary as far as directing goes.
He is. In my opinion. He's a visionary of special effects. He's incredible with special effects. He just needs to just stay away from the typewriter, stay away from the word processor because his scripts are just atrocious.
They really are. I agree. And I think what elevated The Abyss is just first of all the setting where it takes place.
Yes.
I think
for those uninitiated, why don't you tell us what The Abyss is about?
That's a good point. You should probably do that. The Abyss is basically about a deep core oil drilling crew that they actually they go on this rig it's not a boat, but it's a rig that sits on the ocean floor, and it drills into the earth to get an oil line going, so they can set up an oil derrick out in the middle of the ocean. Mm-hmm. And so it takes place. But most of the movie takes place on the ocean floor, which again is a very unique setting. And so what happens is there's a submarine that wrecks nearby where this rig is, and this team of Navy SEALs go down to this rig and kind of use it as a base to try to go retrieve some information and some of the it's a nuclear sub that's carrying warheads and stuff like that. So that's kind of where it takes off, is the clashing between this, just basically they're a bunch of roughneck oil drillers on the bottom of the ocean, and these team of SEALs show up. So that's kind of what the movie's about. And it turns out there's this really cool sci-fi twist to it, where there's these aliens essentially that are basically just living on the ocean floor at the bottom of this really deep ridge on the bottom of the floor. And so I think on the ocean floor. And I think that's what makes it such a unique film, is 90% of it takes place underwater, which just imagine the nightmare of filming underwater.
Oh yeah.
Some of it, this rig that they live in is, it's obviously not just underwater. It's underwater, but it's, the capsule or whatever.
Right. But it's very confined.
Right.
And I know you have a problem with claustrophobic situations.
Yeah, I do. That movie scares the crap out of me a lot. So, and I think the characters are better developed than a lot of James Cameron's other characters. I mean, his character is pretty good. Jack Dawson was a cool character.
He was a cool character in a movie that had just a really, really far-fetched romantic plotline for me. Right. I thought it was just like, oh, hey, he saved her. All right. It's like they talk about it, and we're going on a tangent here, but we'll go back to the Abyss in a moment. But in Titanic, like, they're talking about, we're in love and everything, and Kate Winslet's like, I'm in love with him and everything. And it's like, dude, you met him 3 days ago, and true. And like when Cal accuses Jack of stealing the diamond, and he's like, oh no, Rose, I would never do that. I'd never do that. It's like, dude, she met you 3 days ago, and you already got her to cheat on her fiance. It's like you to pull back a little bit on it and realize that you don't have the kind of leverage or the I don't know. It's
clearly just, you've never been in love, Matt. Oh, gosh, open your heart.
Yeah, well, I love Sunshine, so
nice. Yeah,
but
that's a textbook love movie.
Yeah, so,
But my point
back to the Abyss.
My point was that James Cameron can make good characters like Jack Dawson or Kyle Reese, cool characters. Yeah. But I think some of his best examples of characters are Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio from The Abyss. I think their relationship, how they hate each other and love each other, their exes. I think they both had good chemistry and worked off each other well.
I will say that's one of the best roles that I've seen Ed Harris in.
Yeah, I think so.
By far.
Right.
And as a side note, when we were talking about this off the air, Tiny was trying to remember Dennis Hopper's name.
Oh, jeez.
And he went through, he tried for hours, about a solid hour trying to remember Dennis Hopper's name. And he asked me what the first initial was, and I was like, D. And he ran through every D name you can possibly think of. David, Dennis.
Derek.
Or not Dennis, but Derek, David, Derek, Don.
Daniel.
Dylan, Daniel. Demetrius, and it was just I was just cracking up. So that was a funny thing.
I was so upset.
Yeah, it was a funny thing to bring up on a podcast when it didn't happen on air. But
with the Abyss, I think if you haven't seen the movie, the little spoiler here, there's a scene where Mary Mastrantonio's character drowns, and then Ed Harris's character has to carry her back to the rig, and they revive her, and it's such a powerful scene. It's just
very tense, very chilling.
Yeah, it's hard to watch. It's really hard to watch. It's an amazing scene. And also, last thing I'll say about The Abyss is it was literally a visually groundbreaking film for its time, because I think it was literally the first film to ever use CGI, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right.
I think it was like that, or maybe the very early stages was or maybe it
Altered
was States. I think maybe
I forgot about that. But I know you're a big fan.
I like that film too. Yeah, but this, I think this movie really broke it through for the public, so they could, it was a big movie that a lot of people saw, and I think that film was pretty instrumental in letting people know that CGI is okay and what it could really do. Yeah, so that's why I like The Abyss more than other James Cameron movies.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a movie that James Cameron did that takes place that involves water in some way, watch The Abyss or pretty much any other movie of his.
Oh man, we should do just a James Cameron episode. Just let Matt vent because he could fill a book with his issues with James Cameron. Oh man,
he's not going to be a guest on the podcast. I say while sitting at a table in a house in Speedway, Indiana.
Yeah, spark plugs.
Yeah, go plugs.
So what's next on your list, Matt?
Well, I'm going to switch it up a bit and go with the TV show and alienate even more listeners. Particularly, I have to give a shout out to my friend Mike, who he's going to be a guest on the podcast soon, I'm sure. But I already feel like I feel like maybe he might think I'm attacking him for attacking Star Wars and this next title, but I'm not. It's all in good faith, Mike. I love you. But the TV show is Dexter.
Oh, Dexter.
Yes. Yes.
Geez. We share the same opinion on this show.
Yes, and you followed it for a lot longer than I did. I will say, first off, that I only gave it 7 episodes, and that's 6.5 more than I should have. Because, holy crap. First of all, I went in with the expectation of it being a very dark anti-hero show about a serial killer who is hunting other serial killers, and he's trying to struggle with his inner demon, his whatever he calls it, the dark passenger or something, whatever it is. But what threw me off so much at the beginning and turned me away from the show was the vibrant tone of Miami and how it's like a very Cuban feel and very, very colorful and everything. It just did not mesh with what the tone of the series is. I mean, the dude is murdering people and we're seeing fast cuts of Miami nightlife, and it's just I didn't like it. And then, like I said, I gave it 7 episodes because like my friend Mike, he's one of my closest friends, and he swore by it, and I totally respect his opinion. I'm not trying to downgrade his opinion because it's a very popular show. It just wasn't for me. But like another example is the plot of season 1. Dexter is being taunted by this ice truck killer who kills women and chops them up in ice trucks and all that. So he's being taunted by this guy, and we don't know who he is, don't know anything about him. I swear to you, first of all, it's an interesting plot, but the second the actor appeared on the screen that the ice truck killer eventually became, I just knew it was him.
Right.
Because they were writing for him. Like they gave him something that was like that, like they wrote for Dexter and his sister, and then also Dokes, which that's a whole other bag of like I'll go on a tangent here. Dokes equals bad writing.
Oh man, he was terrible.
Yeah, season 1, first episode, he hates Dexter because of his intuition, but instead of using like subtlety, they just put it on they write him on the nose like, oh, I hate you, Dexter, and I don't know why, but I'm gonna make you mad or something, whatever.
There's no depth to it.
There's no depth at all. There's no subtext. It's right on the surface. And then there's this whole plot line where this cop and cop's wife gets killed or something, and it turns out that Dokes was having an affair with the wife of the cop, I guess, and he goes off the grid to go after this drug kingpin who's responsible for the murder and all that. And so he's about to murder this guy in cold blood off the grid when all of his cop friends show up, and they're like, oh yeah, this was a setup. We set you up to get us close to the kingpin and everything. Just ignore the fact that a police officer was about to murder a man and that the entire case would have been thrown out in court. But whatever, we got some character development shoved down our throats.
Right, character that no one liked anyways.
Yeah. So I gave it 7 episodes, and my parting thought on Dexter is that ask anyone who their favorite... by the way, narration is a crutch. I can't stand it.
It's terrible.
And that just seems like so... It's like...
It almost never works out, really.
Yeah, and they're showing us rather than telling us his feelings. And it's a very complex character, I will admit that. And it's a very dark character, at least it should be, despite what the show shows you. And they just tell us how he feels, and it's just such a turnoff for me. But ask anyone who their favorite character is, and by default, it's Dexter. And I don't know. I mean, I know that it's...
Well, I mean, the show is called Dexter, so...
Yeah, but, I mean, I don't watch Boardwalk Empire and think, oh, that Boardwalk is my favorite character. Like, it's just poor writing, in my opinion.
That would be a totally different show.
Oh, it really
Boardwalk
would be.
Empire starring the Boardwalk.
Yes, it would be a tragedy piece because the Boardwalk would be just stepped on by all these people.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm with you on Dexter. I think I watched like 5 seasons.
You did, didn't you?
Oh
Yes.
my gosh, it's still going. It's like the sitcom of dramas. It's ridiculous. Why does that? Why would you give that show?
I think they have one more season.
Right. I think they're doing that.
And I think one season. What's her name? His sister. That's like.
Yeah.
It's his adopted sister, so it's weird that it's not weird that they have sexual tension. She like finds out that he's a serial killer once she finds out that she has feelings for.
I don't care.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't care.
Moving on.
Moving on. Well, I'm gonna wrap up my list with the TV show as well.
Oh, nice.
But I'm not necessarily hesitant to bring it up, but the show is actually Friday Night Lights, which I know you were a big fan of. And
you're fired.
Yeah, I'll just go. But
well, it's your house. So.
Yeah. Anyways, like most of the people that watched it loved it, and there are just people who consider it literally one of the best shows ever.
Yes, that's where I have a big bone to pick with everyone that loves that show.
Me too. And I don't think it's even close to that. And I think I don't even have really specific examples of what I didn't like about it. I think it's just the kind of the overall theme that I don't think I can really relate to teenagers anymore.
Yeah.
Even though I was only a teenager, 8-9 years ago, but still, I just don't think I can relate to them anymore. And even in this show, I used to play football. I played football, and I loved it. It was some of the best time of my life playing football, but for some reason, I don't know. I think part of it is the writers just didn't make the characters real relatable for adults, I guess. Compared to other teen shows and movies you see, you can still relate to some of those characters, but for some reason these I just couldn't get involved with for some reason. It just wasn't a bad show. It just wasn't.
It wasn't the best ever.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't. It's very, very overrated.
Yeah. I will say that I loved Kyle Chandler in it. I loved his portrayal as Coach Taylor. Coach Taylor. But I haven't. I'm not going to do it. But anyway. Anyway, so I liked it too, and I followed it through. Well, I followed it on Netflix. I mean, but it just, and I made this comparison. I wrote about it on my blog, obsessiveviewer.com.
Shameless plug,
basically shameless plug. So it felt like, and I know we referenced the show last week. I did, but it felt like Dawson's Creek if Dawson played football and wasn't annoying as hell.
Yeah.
But because it was a teen drama, and they did some things that were a little crazy, a little out there, and then partly because of the writer's strike and partly because of writer laziness, they just dropped storylines and characters just out of nowhere. And I understand that they graduate from high school and they move on, but give them closure, because that's the point of storytelling is give them closure.
Right.
Wrap things up. Yeah, it's
So yeah, I don't know. I figured I'd bring it up just because my opinion of it's a little different than general consensus.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's a bad show though. I think it's worth. I don't regret watching it or anything.
Yeah.
So, was there any honorable mentions or anything that you wanted to bring up quickly? 2
honorable mentions, real quick. Alien Resurrection. I am actually a fan.
Nice.
After Alien 3, anything would have been good. And I just feel like Joss Whedon's work on the script just really jumped out. Like Winona Ryder's crew is essentially the prelude to the cast of Firefly, with Ron Perlman essentially playing an R-rated Jane character.
Yeah, cool.
And it was just cool to see that, and also swimming aliens.
Yeah,
who knew? And then I have one more that I'm going to save until you're ready to say it, because it's the same one.
Okay. Yeah.
I believe.
My honorable mentions were Blade Runner.
I need to give that another shot.
Yeah, that's what most people say, because what the hell? That movie has it's very telling that there's like 7 different versions of the movie.
Yeah.
But I don't think editing was the only problem with it.
Right.
It's a really cool concept. The whole clone thing.
Yeah.
It's a really cool concept for a movie, but I just don't think it was presented very well.
Interesting.
I don't know. I can actually compare it. It came out around the same time as the movie Dune, and I like the movie Dune. It's a cheesy flick, but
sure.
I actually like the movie Dune better than I like Blade Runner. So I know you're going to hate me. And then my other quick mention will be it's kind of similar to the James Cameron one. Mm-hmm. When I think of Quentin Tarantino, most people go, Pulp Fiction or Inglourious Basterds, something like that. But I actually think of True Romance. I think
it's actually Christian Slater.
Right. It's actually my favorite Tarantino movie. I think the love story in that between Clarence and Alabama is just one of the best. I really love it.
It's really great.
Still better than Twilight. And it's just a straightforward plot. And also my favorite Tarantino dialogue scene is in that movie between Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper, whose name I couldn't think of.
Yes.
I think that's Tarantino's best dialogue work in my opinion. So, yeah.
I would say yes, but also no. No, I would say his best dialogue work is the opening scene of Inglourious Basterds.
Okay.
With Christoph Waltz being his awesomeness just seeps through the screen.
Being obviously evil.
Yes, it's just 2 characters talking at a table, and it's just compelling. Like every time I see it, I think I would watch an entire movie of this.
It's hard to argue with that.
Yeah.
What was the last one you wanted to mention?
The much highly touted series 6 Feet Under.
You mean the pinnacle of television?
The pinnacle of television. 6 Feet Under, where nothing happens and the characters are horrible and people just suck so much.
Amen.
Yes, it's a purely character-based drama that's driven by some of the most unlikable, whiny, pretentious characters I've ever seen on television.
Absolutely.
And like I posted on my most annoying characters post on the blog that pretty much everyone that's not played by
Peter Krause
or Richard Jenkins,
right?
Particularly I can't remember her name, but
the woman that Peter Krause dates.
Yes, her name is Brenda.
Brenda.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
I've tried to push that show from my memory for so long.
She was just a horrible character, and by season 5, we're expected to like her or get around to liking her, and she does make some improvements by that time. It's like, no, she's a horrible human being. I can't get behind it, and it's by that point I was kind of done with the show anyway. But it was just annoying.
Yep, that's understandable.
And the fan acclaim for it is I don't understand it.
It's beyond overrated.
Yes, it's it's like the Star Wars of television, and no listeners.
We may have to pause it so we can fight.
I'm being facetious, everybody.
So that pretty much wraps it up for our main points. So Matt, what are you looking forward to coming up?
Well, let's see. Breaking Bad. I'm about to start my rewatch of that.
Nice.
Because the final episodes are coming, and I am so nervous and excited and sad to see it ending.
Me too.
It's going to be amazing, I'm sure. Vince Gilligan is he's incredible.
He's a master.
He really is, and it's going to be a fun ride. As far as movies, it's already come out, but I am a Pixar fanboy, and I cannot wait to see Monsters University because, I just love the characters from Monsters, Inc. Monsters, Inc. is one of my favorite Pixar movies.
Oh, it's great.
And even though Pixar hasn't really performed at the top of their game, and I don't fully expect them to perform at the top of their game with Monsters University, I'm still excited to go back to that world and see them at a collegiate level.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
That is exciting, yeah. I bet Matt probably has more, I'm a creepy guy into theater stories than most people because he's seen every Pixar movie in the theater like 4 times.
True story. Sitting in Toy Story 3, I am bawling my eyes out at the end, and there's this little group of little kids down the aisle from me, they're 4 seats away from me, and I'm trying to conceal the fact that I have tears streaming down my face. And I'm sitting there thinking why did those parents sit them right there? Oh. Because it was a matinee on a Sunday and there was no one there. And they just went in my row. I'm like, dude, come on.
So inconsiderate.
Yeah, so I had to sit behind in the theater and kind of wipe my eyes. But and I still can't watch the end of that without tearing up and getting choked up because it's just so powerful. Like they're really powerful storytellers, and it's
absolutely
it's incredible.
They tug at your heartstrings.
Oh yeah. So Tiny, what are you looking forward to coming up?
I'm looking forward to a movie. I'm sure everybody's heard of it, or they've maybe seen the preview for it. It's not quite out yet. It's called The Way, Way Back. It's written by Jim Rash,
right,
from Community. He won an Oscar a year or two ago for The Descendants.
Yeah,
deservedly so. That was a really great script, really great movie.
I still haven't seen it.
You should check it out. It's
I really need to.
Yeah, The Way, Way Back looks really good. Again, just a great cast. Sam Rockwell's in it, Allison Janney, Toni Collette. Just a great cast. Will Forte from SNL is in it.
Oh yes, I love Will Forte.
Yeah, it looks. I think it looks like a really tight, good comedy. You know, like
nice.
You don't get them too often.
Yeah,
I think it's from the producers of Little Miss Sunshine as well.
Oh, great! I
may be mistaken about that, but I think it is.
Okay.
So yeah, that looks like it's gonna be pretty good.
Awesome.
And then as far as television goes. I'm actually going with Orange is the New Black.
Ah, yes, the Netflix series coming out next month.
Right, now that's something that a lot of people maybe not have heard of. Because, it's Netflix.
Yeah.
And, House of Cards was their flagship series, and I think a lot of people had heard about that because it's, plus it had Kevin Spacey behind it.
Yeah, and David Fincher.
So I think that's why people heard about that, but I hadn't even heard a peep about this show until about a month ago.
Right. I think maybe I might have mentioned.
Yeah, Matt mentioned it.
Yeah, because I'd heard whispers about it, but I didn't know much about what it was about or anything. I just kind of wrote it off like, oh, it's women in a prison. Oh, all right, cool. Yeah. Maybe not for me, but I saw the trailer and it looks really amazing.
The trailer really brought it home.
Oh, yeah,
and it's
Jason
pretty much.
Biggs is in it.
Who's that?
Jason Biggs is in it.
Jason Biggs.
I can't remember.
So random.
I know, right? I can't remember who the female lead is, but
she's basically an unknown as far as I remember.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a pretty unknown cast, but man, I was just really the trailer for it really took me. It really got me.
Absolutely.
It just absolutely hooked me. I was like, I'll watch that from the get go. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Nice.
So,
yeah, I'll have to check that out.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty much all we have for this episode. First of all, for the ending, we wanted to give a shout out to our friends over at ExposureExpressNetwork.com. Our friends Anonymous, Bill, and Doc, they allowed us to borrow their recording equipment so we could do this episode.
Thank you guys.
So, yeah, we really appreciate that. Go check out their website. It's ExposureExpressNetwork.com. They have their own podcast. It's pretty interesting. Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to regularly check the blog at obsessiveviewer.com for additional articles and opinions from both Matt and myself. You can follow Matt on Twitter at ObsessiveViewer and me at ObsessiveTiny. And also be sure to like our Facebook page at facebook.com/TheObsessiveViewer. And don't forget to say don't forget to say a prayer for our friends in Chester's Mill.
Yes, those poor souls under the dome.
Poor souls. Amen. All right. Thanks, everybody.